Good morning. A most warm welcome to one and all. I'm the Reverend Doug Watkins, and we welcome you, whether in the sanctuary or watching from home, to Eliot Unitarian Chapel, a liberal religious community of spiritual seekers centered in sharing the journey with compassion, justice, and love as our guide. If you are visiting us for the first time, we are very glad that you are here today. I hope that this service speaks to you and that you feel warmly welcomed. You should have received a guest form on your way in. We invite you to fill that out, both sides if you have kids, and leave it in the collection plate. If you didn't receive one, take a moment before you leave, please, to get one from the greeter. And if you fill this out, it'll help us stay in touch with you. If you are visiting us online, we are also very happy you're here, and you can let us know that you're here by emailing us at welcome@eliotchapel.org, and we can personally welcome you. We have a social hour here at Eliot, currently social rather than coffee hour, because we are back in the high level of transmission. And we also have an online coffee hour, if you wish, at 12:30. And if you have that link already, you're able to join today. But if you sign up, we'll send you the link so that you can join us in the future. We look forward to soon, when the level drops again, joining again for coffee hour, both here and online. We move now into our time of service with our opening words and our chalice lighting. Unitarian Universalists light a chalice every Sunday as a symbol of many things, but most of all of the spark of wisdom in which we take part. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward or inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together. I invite us to rise in the ways that we do as we join in our opening hymn, 1003, Where Do We Come From?
Where are we going? Where do we
Unitarian Universalist congregations are joined in a spirit of covenant. We promise how it is that we will be with each other and how we understand our common journey. I invite you in that spirit to join me in reading together the covenant printed in the order of service, as together we say, "As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be, to listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart, to speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends." Well, it is wonderful to be together as people of all ages. It's wonderful once again to have Scott back in our midst and for us to do our first time for all ages for the new year. So welcome, Scott. Glad you're here. Welcome to everyone, of course.
Happy New Year, friends. Happy New Year. Our time for all ages this morning is by Paolo Cello and is titled "The Fisherman and the Businessman."
So once, there was a businessman who was sitting on the beach in a small Brazilian village. As he sat, he saw a Brazilian fisherman rowing a small boat towards the shore, having caught quite a few big fish. Well, the businessman was impressed and asked the fisherman, "How long does it take you to catch so many fish?"
"Oh, just a short while," the fisherman replied.
"Well, then why don't you stay longer at sea and catch even more?"
"This is enough to feed my whole family."
Well, then what do you do for the rest of the day?"
"Well, I usually wake up early in the morning, usually around 3 a.m. I go out to the sea and catch a few fish, and then I go back, I play with my kids. In the afternoon, I take a nap with my wife. Evening comes, I join my buddies for a drink in the village. We play guitar, we sing, we dance throughout the night."
Well, I'm a PhD in business management, and if I could offer you a few suggestions to make you a more successful person. From now on, you should spend more time at sea and try to catch as many fish as possible. And when you've saved enough money, you can buy a bigger boat and catch even more fish. Soon you will be able to afford to buy more boats, set up your own company, own your own production plant for canned food and distribution network. And by then, you will have moved out of this village into Sao Paulo, where you can set up a headquarters to manage your other branches.
"And sir, what happens after that?"
After that, you can live like a king in your own house. And when the time is right, you can go public and float your shares in the stock exchange. You will be rich."
"And sir, what happens after that?"
Well, after that, then you can finally retire. You can move to a house by the fishing village, wake up early in the morning, catch a few fish, return home to play with kids, have a nice afternoon nap with your wife, and when evening comes, well, you can join your buddies for a drink, play the guitar, sing and dance throughout the night.
"Well, sir, that all sounds wonderful, but I do have a question."
Okay.
"Isn't that what I'm doing now?"
So we are happy to be exploring the theme of finding our center, which asks us, rather than necessarily listening to what the world around you tells you what you should do with your life, finding the places that remind us who and what is most important, and from that place to decide what we're each called to do with our one precious life. So I'm glad that we had a chance to share the story together, and we look forward to hearing about religious education's adventures at the end of the service.
Sounds great, Doug. Kids will gather at the back. See you soon.
From you I received, to you I give, together we share the ways we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share the ways we live. I invite us for a moment to be together in a time that quiets our minds and our hearts and our bodies and invites us to a more open and contemplative state. I ask as we prepare for that you find a way of sitting in your seat that feels well grounded and centered and open and comfortable enough so that you're not distracted by what else is happening in your body. And for just a moment, to let breath be the thing that brings you most fully into this time in this space. As this new year begins, we realize that so much is undone. There is so much to do, so much to heal in us and in the world. So much to acquire: a meal, a healthy and fit body, a job, a better job, perhaps a lover, proof that we have and are enough just around the corner of now. And up against it, the reality of all that falls short in the limits of today. Here we honor the limits. If your body won't do what it used to, for right now, let it be enough. If your mind won't stop racing and can't think of the word, let it be enough. If you feel utterly alone and in despair, be all that here with us right now. If today it is hard to sing because your throat hurts or you do not have the heart for music, it is okay for you to be silent and let the song be around you. And when the offering plate goes around, if you do not have the money or the heart to give, you may let it pass. The world won't stop spinning on her axis if you don't rise to all occasions. Love won't cease flowing in your direction. Your heart won't stop beating, and all hope won't be lost. You are already part of this plan in the world that saves us. Of that, we have no doubt here. The world needs its oceans of people striving to be good, to carry us to the shores of hope and wash fear from the beachheads and cleanse all wounds so that they might heal. But oceans are big, and I am sure there are parts that don't feel up to the task of the whole some days. Rest, if you must, then, like the swimmer lying on her back who floats, or the hawk carried on a cushion of air. Rest in seats made to hold weary lives, in space carved out for doing nothing much but being. Perhaps then you will feel in your bones, in your weary heart, the aching, healing sense that this is enough. Even this, that we are enough. You are enough. Enough for all these and all of the meditations of our hearts, unspoken in this hour. For this and so much more, I say amen, and blessed be. Let's remain seated for a moment as we join our voices in number 4. It is our tradition here every month to share part of our offering with the local organization that does important work in our community. In January, we will be sharing our Sunday collections with Meacham Park Neighborhood Improvement Association. We have long had a partnership with Meacham Park, a predominantly African-American community here in Kirkwood. And even before it was annexed to Kirkwood, an intentionally diverse group of neighbors and friends and residents came together to advocate for Meacham Park. And we have long been part of that coalition. So I invite us to lend even more of a hand by finding a space of generosity to offer part of our offering to this organization as they do their essential work. May that spirit be with us as the offering is given and received.
Sing
Thank you, Adam and David. As our greeters come forward with our offering, may we offer our own blessing for the good work of our generosity. As we read together the dedication of the gifts printed in the order of service. Together we say, "To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings." Thank you, one and all. As we move into our time of reflection, one of the things that we sometimes do as we begin a new month and a new theme is that we invite multiple voices to explore. And this week it was to be me and Reverend Krista. Reverend Krista has been under the weather all week and was still poised to be here today, but woke up with a new round of congestion. We send our warm thoughts and our healing prayers her way, but Sarah Fleming has very graciously been willing to offer Reverend Krista's reflection for us today. So, thank you, Sarah, and welcome.
It would be an understatement to say that it has been quite a week at the U.S. House of Representatives. When control of the House switched parties earlier this week, there was nothing usual about what is usually a routine issue, electing the Speaker of the House. Instead of a simple vote, there has been failed vote after failed vote, as deals were made and broken, and factionism splinters what was already splintered. It reminds me of a story I heard as a child in Sunday school. 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 16 to 28, identified in Judaism as one of the books of the former prophets. Two women have come before King Solomon, asking him to settle a grave matter. Each has given birth to a child. One of the children has died in the night, and now both women are claiming the remaining infant as theirs. Each is asking Solomon to return the child to her. Instead of making a choice, King Solomon says to the women, "I will have this child cut in half, so that you may each have half of it." One woman says, "Fine, I'm out of here." The other begs, "Give her the boy. Please do not kill him." Solomon sees that she is the mother of the child, because a mother would sacrifice everything to protect her child's life. What we saw this week is the latest example of the struggle for who gets to raise the baby. What we saw was the willingness of some of our elected leaders to cut the baby in half. We were and are in a struggle for which values will center in the decisions made by the legislative body. This month, finding our center is our spiritual theme. There are so many things that come to mind with that phrase. The act of centering is often understood as looking within for peace and balance, calm and rest, or as spiraling in towards a rock-solid, unchanging something that anchors us amidst the uncertainties of life. While this understanding of centering is very helpful and healing, there are other ways to approach a center. I'm thinking of the center as something alive, moving, active, pulsing with life, like a newborn baby held in the arms of a parent, both fragile and exceptionally strong, something you would sacrifice for. How many of you have ever had physical therapy? I've done a lot. Heavy work as a farm kid and some accidents mean I have issues that will ask for my attention for the rest of my life. For all of these different things I've used physical therapy to help, there is a common focus, and that is your center, all of the muscles in your abdomen, often called the core. When these muscles are underused or weak, It leaves the rest of your body unheld. Our shoulders, hips, knees, low back are often strained and not as strong as they could be. By activating your body's center, you can better hold the rest of your physical self, like a parent holding and protecting a child. That's how our center holds our whole bodies. Thinking on what we saw this week in DC, our nation is in bad need of some PT. The core, or what we thought was the core, seems very weak, unstable, even unmoored. Many of us are yearning to activate the center and wondering how to do that. In Unitarian Universalism, our center is a core set of values that we believe are the most precious things of all. Generosity, because everything we have is a blessing to be shared. Evolution, because we're always growing and changing. Interdependence, because everything is connected. Pluralism, because there are many ways to know and experience life. Equity, because everyone has inherent worth and dignity. And justice, because we want the richness of life to be withheld from no one. But the greatest of these, what activates these values, is love. A nourishing love that is greater than any of us can imagine. That's the baby we hold in our arms. The values of generosity, evolution, interdependence, pluralism, equity, justice, and love.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. Perfect lead-in for this second section. And thank you, Sarah, for offering Krista's wonderful thoughts. As I think about how I will introduce a theme, I find myself sort of chuckling how often I want to begin by uncovering or illuminating the both ands in our lives that we tend to want to turn into either ors. Meaning there are so many things in our life that we pit against each other as if they're in conflict or opposites, when in reality they are both needed in order for us to live whole and complete lives. And given in our world where there is so much true competition and conflict, it's not like we need to create anymore. And our spirituality often urges us to give up all fake fights of all kinds and not waste our energy, instead using our time, our love, our spirit of life for things that are worth that investment. And so one of the most common either-ors that we erect, that is always a both and, is that there is sort of that inward journey and that outward way of living in the world, and that they are in conflict with each other, when they are absolutely how we live most profoundly. It's really how we live. We all need to find times to turn inward and do some soul searching. But always that is both in service to what it is that the outer world is asking of us, but also informed and changed by our relationship with all that is around us. And even in presenting this idea to you, I find myself in that either-or predicament, knowing that really the both and is that the only way I can actually talk to you about what matters in this is to first understand how it matters deeply to me. And from that place of deep connection, to seek the ways that we have common threads that hold us together as a community. For me, I've found that the way that finding my center has come into play most often has to do with times where I'm thinking about very significant change in my life. And it's almost always been in one of two categories. It's either been that some particular personal relationship either is going to change or needs to. And the times when I've had to ask myself, particularly as a minister, but there's a similar question we all ask. How is what I am doing in life right now in connection with what I need most to do, both from my own inner workings, but also from what is true in the world around me? Shouldn't there be a dance back and forth between those? And so I found myself in relationships when I knew that change was coming to really try to return to who I am right now and to be honest about what is actually happening in my life, in my mind, and in my heart. And to think about that person that I'm in relationship with, as best as I can know it, what is happening for them, what are they going through, to give it a little bit of time and patience. But if and when the time comes that we need to make a change, to do what I can to hold us both. Given the journey that we've had together, to me that just feels like the only right way to make that important change. It doesn't make it any less easy. Maybe it actually makes it harder, but it feels like it is centered in something deeper. It gives me the strength and the courage to do the hard thing, but it also softens me enough to see the humanity in this person that I've spent sometimes years with. So each of us has our own journey through that kind of decision making, or will, or have 1,000 times. The same is true in deciding what it is that we're called to do in the world. For me, it is very important that I feel like what I am doing is fulfilling and the right use of my gifts and my talents. And for many years, serving one particular congregation did that work very meaningfully. But one of the hardest things I've ever had to do is begin to realize that my work there was coming to an end. And if I stayed too long, I actually would probably begin to do damage because I was no longer working from that place of great mutual love and mutual fulfillment. So for each of us in our own lives, we again and again try to decide what it is that we are doing in our lives and how it both meets some powerful inner core, but also the way that our relationship with the world asks us to do sometimes very different things, or to think about what we do in a different way. So it is as we begin to journey through what it means to find our center. It is definitely important that part of that journey is inward, to think about who we are now, what it is that is most important to us, what the last few months and years have done to us and with us, with as much honesty as we can foster. And from that honest place, to begin to turn outward and think about what is true. A few minutes ago, when Sarah shared Reverend Krista's thinking about the core that we work from in physical therapy, it is that sort of sense of finding what it is that gives us the greatest sense of identity and strength and courage when we need it most, and then acting from that place. Sikh activist and educator and author Valerie Kaur wrote, "I believe that deep wisdom resides within each of us, and some call this voice by different sacred names. Spirit, God, Jesus, Allah, Om, Buddha nature, Wahaguru. And others think of this voice as the intuition one hears when in a calm state of mind. But whatever name we choose, a listening to our deepest wisdom requires disciplined practice. The loudest voices in the world right now are the ones running on the energy of fear, criticism, and cruelty. But I must not lose myself at the feet of others," she writes. "My most vigilant spiritual practice is finding the seconds of solitude to quiet enough to hear the wise woman in me." So again and again, when we turn to the practices that wise people ask of us or remind us about, when we are seeking that sense of finding that core, one of the things we need is times in our lives that we set aside for a little bit of quiet, to listen, to be open, to wait and see what we discover. And in many of our lives, that time is at such premium. It takes some intention, some forethought, sometimes some creativity to find moments when we can be quiet with ourselves. And sometimes when we find that time, it is not necessarily a pleasant experience. Sometimes what we discover in our quiet is that a lot of things in our lives feel much more unhappy than we let ourselves actually feel. So it is essential that we find ways in our lives. I hope in some ways what you do here creates a little bit of space for that contemplation inward. And as we think about that, it may help us to also have some ways to explore inwardly rather than just sitting quietly, although that is powerful and needed, but also sometimes very hard. Another way that you can do this is something that my colleague, Karen Herring, suggested. She talks about, as she was working as a chaplain, that she kept hearing on the medical floors the idea of being oriented times 3. And at first, she thought that that meant that someone was really uber-oriented, that they were like so super focused on things at all times that they were fully consumed in each moment. But the nurses and doctors actually explained to her that what it really was about is discovering whether a person is oriented to person, place, and time. A determination commonly made by asking patients, "What is your name? Do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is?" Perhaps you've been asked those questions. And she found herself wondering if there was a way to sort of take the heart of those questions and turn them into a way of reorienting yourself spiritually. When you think, "What is your name?" doesn't that ask in some ways, do you know who you really are? Do you know whose you are? The people, the ideals to which you give yourself? Do you know where you are in the world right now? Your place in the world, in your life, in your relationships? And what day is it today? What time is it in your life? What is it time for? What are you living for today? What do you hope for tomorrow? How is the past a part of you now? So one way that we can explore is to take those simple ideas and to push into them a little more deeply and more personally. So there's that component of this theme of centering. But just as essential is the truth that we always do that work in deep connection. The only way that we really can know ourselves is how we are in relationship with the world. That really is the ground in which we find the deepest and most meaningful way of living out who we are. And what's more, it not only shapes us, but we shape it by how we interact in the world. And the world itself continues to find its center as well. Think about what we've seen this week in terms of politics, and what a difference it would make if more of the people in that conversation really worked and lived from a deep center and a deep sense of connection with each other. What an incredible difference that would make in how this world feels and acts and is. So part of our exploration in this time is to push into what it is that our relationships ask of us, and to give them enough time and space so that they may really speak to us more fully. Over the next month, we will find a variety of ways of doing that. There are a lot of different ways that both the inward and the outward journey towards the core of who we are may be fostered. We will think a little bit about how it is that we find our courage and how both that inward and outer relationship helps us do it. We will think about, as was sort of very generally alluded to in Reverend Krista's words about our own tradition, some of those ideas like equity and connection and all of those things are part of an ongoing exploration right now that we believe is essential to who we are. In the next 2 years, as we have set up as a regular process, we will step back and look at the core of who we are as Unitarian Universalists and seek our way of understanding who we are now and what we are called to do. Our center is always relational. The way that you live in the world changes you and changes the people around you. The way that you take part in the ongoing life of the world, the people you love, the children you raise, the ways that you give yourself to each other, all of those are part of the real center of your being. And as we make that more meaningful, more real, more grounded, our life draws and lives from a deeper place. All of it helps us see the world in a more connected and powerful way. Sufi scholar Omid Safi wrote this: "If you have an inner voice telling you how this country is not right, that these shootings aren't right, that racism isn't right, that treating immigrants as they are isn't right, honor that voice. It's your heart reminding you that love is real, that there is a more beautiful way to live. Nurture this voice and link it to others." That is the heart of our work this month. May we do it together lovingly and courageously. I invite you to join me in our closing hymn, rising in the ways that we do as we sing together 1051, We Are.
Each star that's full, the morning star rises and
And now, when the weight of the world would tip us over, when the winds of the world would leave us spinning, when the voices of the world might lead us astray, may we remember that here, home is always waiting, that stillness is there to calm us, friends to anchor us, and voices to help us find our way. We may extinguish this chalice, but that greater wisdom lives on. That spirit of warmth and community lives in us. That fire of giving ourselves to what matters most will be in how we live until we gather in this place again. I invite you to take your seat for one more gift of music. Thank you for joining us this morning. As you go forth into 2023, we wish us all a year of more possibility, greater peace, greater wisdom. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week.